Yes, folks, it's Tales from the Jails with John G. Sutton. Do please like and subscribe. It takes no time at all. Just click the like button, and please do leave me comments. That usually works. Also, I'm intending to do another live broadcast. So if anybody's interested in a live broadcast, please do leave a comment down below, tell me, and we'll set a date. I suggest the first Tuesday in July. But you tell me what you think. Yeah, that'd be good. Now, I'm going to talk today about certain rather controversial topics, and certain of them that I have been, well, in part involved in. But first of all, I'll talk about Lord Louis Mountbatten. Now, I'm going to put a link to a video that deals with this by two journalists who've done some serious research into the details of Louis Mountbatten and his predilection for little boys. Apparently, he liked Sri Lankan little boys best of all. Imagine that. I mean, this was the First Lord of the Admiralty, the last Viceroy of India, the erstwhile elected grandfather of the King, King Charles III, and he was killed in 1979 by a bomb that blew him up on his boat when he was out with some boys of his choosing from the Kinkara care home or orphanage, and it was apparently reasonably well known to the establishment that he was involved in this paedophilia, and of course it was about to come out. It was about to all go into the public regime, and they couldn't have that. Now, I believe, and I know this is pure supposition, but the journalists seem to agree with me. Journalists from the Times and the Observer, I believe, and they've written a number of books on this subject. And I'll put the link down below. You have a look and see what you think. But I know that the establishment do not allow their dirty washing to be done in public. So I believe that Mountbatten was assassinated, not necessarily by the people that they claimed him to be assassinated by, but by the establishment itself, who was tidying up because they couldn't allow this man, this very important man, this highly respected member of the elite establishment, and he would have been absolutely, without any shadow of a doubt, a 33rd degree Mason of the highest rank, as indeed King Charles is a 33rd degree Mason. Another 33rd degree Mason, that's the highest degree that you can go in the Freemasons, and so was Jimmy Savile. They seem to be all mixing in the same group. It's a fact, that King Charles used to, before he was King Charles, when he was the Prince of Wales, used to write to Jimmy Savile and request advice on decisions he was going to make. And, of course, we all know that Jimmy Savile was closely associated with Margaret Thatcher, and numerous other big names thrown into this mix, and they couldn't allow somebody as high profile as Lord Louis Mountbatten to actually be ousted as a paedophile. It's a little known fact, but you'll see it if you watch this video clip I'm going to put down below there, yeah, that the FBI had a file on him and were watching him, and he was noted to attend male brothels on places like Malta and various other stations. This has been reported by his drivers who have made statements, because he had a driver when he was an admiral, the First Lord of the Admiralty, and what an example he was. So when it all started to come out, it is my supposition that they sent a team out to terminate that. Of course, there would be casualties as well as Lord Louis Mountbatten, but these were just collateral damage to the establishment. Another figure that I know a little bit about, and perhaps it's again my supposition, but I knew the people involved. There was a writer, an author, and a film producer who was a good friend of mine, who had been, in his time, a senior intelligence officer for the SAS. Now, I knew this guy. He was in his 70s at the time, but he was an accredited writer. He was a journalist with the national newspapers. And if any of you remember the headline for the lady who won a lot of money in the 1960s, "Spend, Spend, Spend" was the headline. That was written by my friend. And we were good buddies. We used to chat every other day on the telephone. I'd go and see him. He lived up near Pickering in a place called MOUNTBATTEN. And as I said, he was a senior intelligence officer with the SAS. And as I said, I used to speak to him every other day. And it came the time when Princess Diana died, when she was killed in the car crash, the supposed car crash in France, which was a car crash, of course. And during that week that took place, I never heard from my friend at all. And it was only about 10 days later that I managed to get hold of him on the telephone. And I said, "Come on, where have you been? You've been somewhere, you've not told me. Where have you been?" He said, "Well, where do you really think I've been?" I said, "It's not for me to guess." I said, "But I think you've been somewhere very mysterious." He said, "I've just come back from Paris." Well, that would tell me a great deal more than those simple words would imply, because this guy was a man who used to plan the SAS covert missions, and he was really brilliant, and I believe that he was one of the top boys who sat down with a team to decide how they were going to terminate the problem that was being presented by Diana, because she was a big problem. She was associating herself with Dodi Fayad's son, and she was, by all accounts, expecting his child and going to get married. She'd made a statement just weeks before that she thought she was going to be killed in a car crash, and that she had a big announcement to make that would rock society. Well, the big announcement was that she was killed in Paris in a car crash. Now, it just seems a little bit too mysterious for me. I mean, have you ever seen these Mercedes-Benz S-Class, which is the car that she was killed in? I mean, I had a big Mercedes, and it was built like a tank. You could have run it straight into a tree and it would have crashed the car, ruined the car, but you would have been perfectly safe. I mean, they were really solid vehicles then. They're used by dignitaries all over the world to take them from A to B, and it wouldn't be right that they would allow Diana to drive around in a faulty car with a drunken driver. No, that would not happen. And she had her bodyguard with her, who was saying very little, by the way. So that's a brief story about what I know about the death of Princess Diana. And Louis Mountbatten, I will put the link down there. And listen, I know what happens when people who are in positions of authority, even in the prisons. There was a governor in Wormwood Scrubs prison. It's written about in my first book, which you can get on Amazon, by the way. It's called HMP Manchester Prison Officer. There's the thing, yeah. You can see it on Amazon, and it details how I uncovered and proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that the governor was in actual fact smuggling out letters for a particularly violent inmate who was serving, I believe, 16 years for armed robbery. I know his name, but I'm not going to mention it here. And when I confronted the inmate and said, "Look, I know that you're going into this man's office at lunchtime," he was a Category A, by the way, and being quite incorrectly removed from his cell at lunchtimes and taken to this governor's office. And I said, "No, I want you to tell me why you're doing that." He said, initially he told me it was above my pay grade, but he did tell me what had been happening. He said that he'd been taken down to the governor's office, and in return for certain favours, he was receiving small half bottles of whiskey, and he was smuggling his letters out. And I reported all this, and I've reported it. I put a proper report in, a written report, put my name on it, everything. Went to see the chief officer, the number one chief officer at Wormwood Scrubs, and he was absolutely furious. "Who has authorised you to conduct investigations into senior members of staff?" And I was able to point out to him that I had a warrant card that said I had all the powers of a police constable, and that it was my duty to report it, and that is exactly what I was doing. So you'd think that they'd do something about that, wouldn't you? I mean, it was a threat to the security of the prison, and they did do something about it. They called in the CID, and the CID were in the prison investigating me. Not the governor, but me. There were prisoners coming up to me on the landing saying, "What the hell have you been doing, boss?" I said, "I've been doing anything other than doing my duty." They said, "Because there's a load of CID officers down there asking questions about you." They were trying to get something on me, trying to get some inmate to make an allegation against me. And I would have been out. I would have been the victim. I would have been the sacrifice to cover up the governor's misdeeds. Because the one thing that the establishment will not allow, which I started with telling about Louis Mountbatten and Princess Diana, they will not allow their malevolent, malignant side to be exposed to the public. So if you do that, you become a threat to the establishment, and they will deal with you. It took them a while to get me. The details about how they eventually did is in Part 3 of my book, HMP Manchester Prison Officer. Song dinger time, folks. I'm going to read you a poem. Now, I particularly like Dylan Thomas. I've been down to see where he used to live in Larne, in Wales, in South Wales. And he used to write in a little shed at the top overlooking the estuary. And this is one of the poems that he wrote there that I particularly like. I'm going to read it to you now. It's called Fern Hill. Are you sitting comfortably? Good. Then I shall begin. Muriel Young used to say that, didn't she, on Watch with Mother or something like that. Anyway, here we are. Fern Hill by Dylan Thomas. Now, as I was young and easy under the apple boughs, about the lilting house and happy as the grass was green, the night above the dingle starry, time let me hail and climb, golden in the heyday of his eyes. And honoured among wagons I was prince of the apple towns, and once below a time I lordly had the trees and leaves trail with daisies and barley down the rivers of the windfall light. And as I was green and carefree, famous among the barns, about the happy yard and singing as the farm was home, in the sun that is young once only. Time, let me play and be golden in the mercy of his means. And green and golden I was huntsman and herdsman. The calves sang to my horn, the foxes on the hills barked clear and cold, and the Sabbath rang slowly in the pebbles of the holy streams. All the sun long it was running, it was lovely. The hay fields high as the house, the tunes from the chimneys, it was air and playing, lovely and watery and fire, green as grass, and nightly under the simple stars, as I rode to sleep, the owls were bearing the farm away. All the moon long I heard, blessed among stables, the night jars flying with the ricks, and the horses flashing into the dark. And then to awaken the farm, like a wanderer white with the dew come back, the cock on his shoulder. It was all shining. It was Adam and maiden. The sky gathered again, and the sun grew round that very day. So it must have been after the birth of the simple light, in the first spinning place, the spellbound horses walking warm out of the whinnying green stable on to the fields of praise, and honoured among foxes and pheasants by the gay house under the new-made clouds, and happy as the heart was long, in the sun borne over and over, I ran my heedless ways. My wishes raced through the house-high hay, and nothing I cared at my sky-blue trades that time allows in all his tuneful turning, so few and such morning songs, before the children green and golden follow him out of grace. Nothing I cared in the lamb-white days that time would take me up to the swallow-thronged loft by the shadows of my hand, in the moon that is always rising, nor that riding to sleep I should hear him fly with the high fields, and wake to the farm, forever fled from the childless land. Oh, as I was young and easy in the mercy of his means, time held me green and dying, though I sang in my chains like the sea. Fernhill by Dylan Thomas. Tales from the Jails, John G. Sutton.